Hello, this is Martin and you're watching another video in which I'm looking at getting started with OpenInsight 10, and today we're going to start building our patient records window. So this is going to be one of the more complicated forms in our fairly simple application. So just a couple of things to note. I have created a few additional images in OpenInsight. I've got one for the consultations, one for comments, one for patient details, one for a lookup, and also an icon for the window. So you'll see those images as we go through, but I've created those in the usual way. So if we go to new and we go into forms and we go data bound form and OK, we need to navigate to our table. Now, because I use a naming convention, I can find mine very quickly and easily. If you don't use a naming convention, you can go table search, and if we then do mp underscore patients, then we can find the table very quickly that way. So we click OK. That then gives us a number of columns, and we can sort those by the field name or the field number. I tend to go by field number purely because I've normally prepared my the dictionary items, that the columns that I'm going to have on the form. I can add more later, but initially I define them in Excel, and I think about what data types and controls I'm going to be using, so they tend to flow in a relatively decent order. So I'm going to have patient number, and I'm going to select a number of these. We're going to surname, forenames, title, and date of birth. So if you do a shift and click, it will select all of those. If you do a control and click, now we can start to select individuals. So I'm going to have address, town, postcode. We want to have gender. Comments is going to go on to a different tab. I do want image path, signature, image URL, approximate age, and then the app options here are going to be on tab 3, and short name I don't need. So if we do an add, we can then look at the control names and control types. So the patient number is going to be an edit line, which I'm okay with, as is the surname and the forenames. Title, I'm going to change that to a combo box because we're going to use a picker for that. The date time picker, we'll come to that one in a minute, but I'm going to leave that one as it is. We're okay with edit table for the address. Edit lines for those is fine. The gender, we're going to have a radio button for no good reason. Image path edit line, signature is going to be a checkbox. And I think we're good for all of the others. So when we're done, we don't want to create a default menu because we're going to run this as an MDI child, so we don't want the buttons either. And I'm not going to bother with a style sheet. I tend to not use style sheets too much. If you've got a style sheet set up, then obviously you can just define this in here. So you can style this window based on the MP app entry MDI main, or if you've got your own style sheets set up, which you would have if you're going to be using style sheets, you would then define the sizes of your controls and the look and the feel of everything else. But I'm going to steer clear of style sheets just for the moment. So we click OK. OpenInsight will then go and create our window for us. I'm just going to drag this over to give me some room to work. And a few things I want to change in here initially is going to be the text for our window. So I want this to be patient records, and I'm not going to worry about a tooltip because tooltips are quite useful if you've got a window that's coming up and requesting some information, but I don't particularly want the tooltip coming up every time the user mouses over this window. Just looking through some of the others, data binding options, I think we're okay with those. The layout, well, we're going to move the layout accordingly as we build the window. I'll have this one center of parent. and the page count is 1. So you'll see up here the page count is disabled. We're actually going to have 3 pages on this form. So if we change that to 3, you'll now see that the scroll or the up down control has been enabled with the page count, so we can easily move through the pages within our form. What else do we want in here? Back color, we're going to change this to light. We'll do light steel blue again. I think that's the one I used previously, and we'll change this to, what should we go with? We'll go to white, and we'll set this as vertical. Okay, that's fine. The font, I'm just going to make sure that we're always using our chosen font, so we'll choose Segoy, and I want regular 9. Okay, we're good on that. Translucency, I don't want to do anything with that. The show effects, I don't believe will work with MDI children, but what I'll do is I'll just do a slide down to the right on a show and a slide up to the left, just for, so we'll see if it works. I don't think it will, but we'll see if it works. I think that only works if this window is being called as a window. So in the test mode, it's going to probably show the slide, and then when we come to run it within the MDI frame, I don't think that it will. Okay, the rest in here I think is good. We're all good for all of those things. Window size, the frame, I don't want it to be sizable, so I'm going to set that to fixed. I don't want the user to be moving things around on this particular window. The help button, I'm going to have the help off of the MDI frame, so we won't worry about that. The icon I do want, and I'm going to pick the icon that I created offline, so it's that one there. So that's okay, that now appears in the top left of our window. The maximize button, now I don't want them to be able to maximize the form, so I'm going to set that to false, but they can minimize it, so that's fine. Show caption, all the rest is okay there. I think we're good for the basic layout of the form. Okay, so let's just make some room. I think we'll grab these controls and just drag them out of the way. And we'll start with the ID label. Now I'm going to change this to LBL underscore patient number to coincide with the text that I want on it, because I want this to be patient number. Okay, sorry about that phone going. I'll just put that onto D&D. Tooltip, I don't think we need, it's all fairly obvious, and we will just stretch this out a little bit for the sizing, so that's absolutely fine. Some of the formatting of these controls I'm going to do in different ways. So for instance, right now, if I want all of these controls to be the same width, I drag through them, right mouse click, and we will set to the maximum width. And then if I want to set the alignment of the text, because I prefer mine to be center left, then again we can drag through them and change that particular property. And I will have the background color as transparent, but for the moment, while I'm moving things around, I'm going to leave it as gray so I can see where things are on the grid. Now the other thing I want to do is to set this to 8 and 8, and that brings me 2 boxes down and 2 boxes in. I can then easily move title across, and we'll just position that, and we'll move the title combo box across. Now I don't need it that wide, so I'm going to set that to, I think we'll set that to 100. Yeah, that will probably do. And I'll bring up the edit line for our patient number, and I'm going to set that to the same width. So I'm doing a, just select the first control, a shift, and click on the second, and then a control and, I can't remember what it is now, right mouse click. So the minimum width is a control and I. The other thing I like to do is make my key field or key control to have a different color on the background. So it just takes my user's eye to that particular control. So I'm going to set that to khaki and khaki none. Okay, no particular reason for that color. Now you'll notice that the combo box is sitting at the top of the label here, and it's only 20 pixels high, not 24, whereas all my other controls are sizing to 24. So I'm going to just use the arrow key. I'm not doing a shift or control. I'm just going to come down 2 pixels, and that just puts it in line for no real reason, just because. Okay, the next thing I'm going to want is forenames, and we're going to bring that in 3 pixels. Well, it's not 3 pixels, it's 3 times 4, so 12 pixels in, but 3 blocks, you know what I mean. And we'll set the width of that, I think, to 200, and we'll bring the surname up, same again, 3 lots, position that one, and again we'll make this 200 wide. Okay, I think that's all right. Some people prefer to right align their control names, and you can do that if you want to. See if you do center right, and then they're closer with a bigger gap between. You know, arguably in this setup, when they're going across the screen, it works. Where I find it doesn't work so well for me is if I do a text align center right here. Now I tend to find that I've got this sort of jaggedy look here. So yeah, I'm just going to change mine back to center left for those two. I'll leave these as they are for now. And the other thing I like to do when I am aligning controls in this way, I like to try and keep them in columns so things are underneath each other. So this edit line is probably a little bit wide, but I've got it the same width as the title, so I'm happy with that. Okay, right, the next thing that I want to do is let's drop on a tab control, I think, and we'll position that so 8 pixels in, and I tend to double the pixels down now just to really define that these are grouped together and this is separate. And we'll drag this across, and I'm going to go slightly wider than the positioning of the surname because I might want my controls on the tab to be right aligned with that control. And I'm just going to move this up slightly so that I have got the grid that I can work on underneath. Right, under containers we've got some group boxes, so I'm going to drop a group box on, and we'll call this GRP underscore patient details. Change the text to patient details, and the font, I think I'm going to want to have that to be bold. And because you can't see the grid through here for positioning controls, I'm going to set the translucency of that to 50. I'm then going to copy and paste another one of those, move it over because it renders in exactly the same place, and this one is going to be group patient picture, and we need to change details to picture. Okay, that's fine. And then we will need to move our control to be 2 pixels down, or wherever we want it in relation to the tab control, and then I've come in 2 pixels, so we're actually 16 pixels in from the left, so 2 to align with the tab control and then 2 to bring it in. And that renders on top of the control, so if we do a right mouse click and ascend to back, that will then push that behind the controls so that we can see them. Right, so the first set of controls that I want on the patient details is going to be the date of birth. So if I take the label and label DOB, and I'm going to change this to date of birth, just because it's a little bit more user friendly. Let's do it with a capital B for no real reason. Then we will size that to the same size as those, and we will then position that. Now if I drag that over, it's not actually going to sit in the panel, and I want this control to actually sit in the panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a cut, and then I'm going to select the panel, control and paste, and then it will paste that control into the panel, but you can't see it. Now the reason that you cannot see it is it was positioned on the form left 140 and top 136, so it's actually off the bottom of our panel, and I want that to be in a position of, and I'm not quite sure, probably 8 and 8, and then you'll see that the control will come on. Now it's in position 8 and 8 on the panel, which is over the text, so we can make sure that we've got that clicked or selected, and then if we do a shift and down arrow, then we're going to come down one blocks of 4 pixels. So I think that's probably okay there, and we're going to do the same, cut, control and paste to drop our date picker. And again, for the alignment, we'll go 8 and 8, so that just brings it up to the top there, and then we can easily reposition that, and then we'll bring the panel over so that it can accommodate our controls. I'm just going to move this one out of the way. We're not going to do that one for the moment because there's a couple of others that I want to do. I want to do approximate age. That doesn't need to be that wide, and I'm not going to have approximate age. We'll just have age. I guess it ought to be approximate age, but I'm just going to set that to age, and that therefore doesn't need to be that wide. And what we'll do is grab both of those two. I'm going to show you something else here. So I'm going to cut, come up to the panel, control and paste, and again they both disappear, and I haven't got a left and a width now because they're both different. So what we're going to do is for left I'll put 8 in, and for top I'll put 8 in there as well, and then we get our controls appear up the top here, and then with them still selected I'll drag them over, and now we will size those accordingly. Actually I didn't want to do that, so let's just size that back again, and we'll bring that up into here, so 3 lots over, bring the age across. Now the age, we're not likely to have anybody more than 100, so for sizing controls what I often do is go 8 8 8 to signify 100, and just see what that looks like in that box, and we can bring that in just a little bit more if we want to. And if I want, I could set the text alignment of that to be centered. Okay, right, so that's fine. Now next thing that we want to do, we'll bring the radio buttons into play, I think. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag those up to roughly where they should be on the form, and we'll do a cut, and we'll do a paste, so control and paste, and then we just need to drag that up into the right place. So I'm just doing that with the arrow keys and the shift button, and so we will control and left to align that, and we'll just drag that into 2 blocks below, and we want to have this wider, but we can't actually size this control. It's one of the few that you can't size. It's self-sizing, this one. So we need to look at our properties, and we need to change a few bits and pieces in here. So with the radio button selected, we'll go into the buttons option, and so button 1 is going to be male, button 2 is going to be female, and button 3 is going to be unknown. Now I know this isn't necessarily politically correct and there are other options, but I'm just going to go with those 3 at the moment, and I'm going to set the value to 1, 2 and 3, so the database will have 1, 2 or 3 saved into it. So if we click OK, then you'll see it self-sizes and it drops down. Now I want this to go across, so we go to auto layout and we double click auto layout, then we can change that very quickly to horizontal. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste in a new label, and I'm going to just drag that down, and we'll change the label to be gender, and we'll change the text to be gender also. That's absolutely fine. I'm happy with that. And then underneath that I'm going to cut and I'm going to paste in the edit table, and again it's in totally the wrong place, so I'll go 8 and 8 to bring that across, and then I'll drag that into the right location. Now you'll notice that the radio button again is set to only 20 pixels high, so I'm going to select that and come down 2, and then that will put that into the middle of the label for us. This panel is clearly not big enough, so we'll just drag that out a little bit more, and we want to have another label, so just drag that down, and this one is going to be LBL address, and we'll have address, and I've done that purely because I just want the address to show in here. I'm going to get rid of all of the styling on this edit table, and we can do that by going into columns, and with address enabled here I'm going to get rid of the address text here. I will, if I get it right, get rid of that, so it gets rid of it on the column header. Now the issue with doing that is you then lose address in the edit table columns here, so you're not going to know which ones you're working with. So my advice would be to leave that as address, and we'll handle the column heading in a different manner, so we'll just leave that there. I don't need to worry about top center and everything else, but there's nothing in here that enables me to not show it. So over on the actual column itself, we've got a data length, cell type, happy with all of those. We don't want multi-line. We've got our data binding, which is good. The text alignment, I want that to be center left. Cell styles I'm not going to worry about. I don't want password style or anything else in there. Mixed case is good. Width of 80 is fine. But what we do want to do, and I'm looking for it, is auto size. Change that to true so that it sets it right the way across the edit table. And I think everything else is absolutely fine in there. And the next thing that we want to do is to get rid of the header here, which we can do in column header height 0 and column label width 0, and then that will get rid of both of those for us, and that should then be good. We can come back to that again if we have an issue. Okay, town. Got a bit of a problem there. Let's just move these out of the way for the moment to make myself some more room. And we'll move the label. So we'll cut and we'll paste the label into the appropriate location. So we want that to be the same width. And we want it to be 2 pixels underneath that one. underneath the table, so there. Town, I actually want that to be a combo box as well, so we're going to delete that, and we'll come down to the data bound controls. We'll grab a combo box and we'll control and drop that onto there. Now we need to tell it which column it's associated with. It knows we're in MP Patients table, and the column that we want is, surprise surprise, Town, that one there. So we'll go OK. Get an assertion failed. If you get any of these while you're working in OI 10, I'm working with an early version, then just click ignore and carry on. These are bits and pieces that are in the product that the developers use. I'm not quite sure what, but there we go. Okay, so select both the table and the combo, and Control and A to make it the same width. Then we want to move postcode. Let's move that up to the top there, and we'll cut and we'll drop it onto that panel again, and we'll move that up to the right location and resize it, and we'll move that over, cut and paste it onto the control there, move it back up, and we will select the edit table and we'll do a Control I to make it size to the thinnest this time. In fact, postcode, that's probably going to be really long. So what we'll do is we'll size it to that control by using Control I again. And then we want to have this control, we'll cut that and drop that onto our group box. We'll just slide that over there, and we'll do a Control left, and we'll just move that up 1, 2, and we will size it with a Control A, and we'll change the word from signature to signature on file, and that's going to be unchecked because obviously we want it to be unchecked until there's a signature on file. Now we can change the layout of this by setting the check to right. At the moment it's false, so if we did true, then we could have our control positioned thus, and then you'd obviously need to resize it so that the checkbox was underneath there, and that gets a little bit finicky. Alternatively, if we want to have our checkbox nicely aligned, then we can get rid of the text altogether, and we'll resize the control. We'll set that to a width of 24, I think. I don't know, text align, if we did center, whether that would, no, it doesn't put it in into the middle. What we'll do is we'll set though the checkbox right to false, and we'll just put that into the appropriate place, and we will do a Control C and a Control V, and we'll just drop that down a couple of places. This is going to be LBL and signature. Make that signature. And signature on file now. Our signature on file now doesn't fit. So there's a couple of things that we can do here. We can either leave it so that it's wrapped, or we can grab all of these controls, that one, and that one, and then if we do a shift and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think that will probably be enough, and we'll just make that a little bit wider. And in fact, I think I'm probably just going to bring that back to there. Then we'll bring the box back into the right place. We'll make that 24 high so that it's consistent. we will then select all of these controls again, and actually no, we won't grab these two. So let's just come off this and do this again. I want that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. Control L to left align them. Now we didn't want to left align these two, because if we left aligned those two, then we would be in a mess, because they would be overlaying the date picker here. So okay, I think we're okay with that. The edit table now is too wide. In fact, that's actually quite a wide edit table, so I'm going to change the width 150, and then we will drag that over to be in line with the age, and then for town we'll do a control I to bring that slightly narrower. Postcode, okay, so the town is width 236. Okay, that's a horrible number, isn't it? So if we go 118, or 120, so 118 would be half of that, but 120 is fine, because remember we're going to be snapping to the grid, so we'll leave that as 120. That's absolutely fine. Now we have our signature on file, all of our labels aligned, and we got all of our controls left aligned, so that looks rather nice. I'm happy with that. Okay, image path is going to be used elsewhere, so we'll just drag that over here for the moment, and image URL, again we're going to drag that over here for the moment, and we'll be looking at these controls a little later. Let's just change that to 150 for the moment. Okay, and then we'll grab the group box and we'll move that up so that's nicely aligned. Move that across. So that's all nicely aligned. And the last thing I want to do with the edit table, because I prefer the row height to be a little bit higher than the default, I'm going to change that to 22. Yeah, I'll leave it as 22 for the moment, and we'll just see where we are at. Okay, right, so some of the other things that we now need to do is to select all of the labels on this panel, including the checkbox and the radio button and age, which we've now hidden, and we will change the background color to transparent, and okay that. So that's good, and we'll do the same up here. Now we couldn't select all of these together because you can't come off a panel. You can't select a load of controls on a panel and a load of controls off a panel. So we do have to do this as two separate jumps. So we'll set that to transparent, that to transparent, and we'll go OK. So that's looking quite nice up there now. So the patient details, we'll just align that over. So I'm just going to do 3 pixels wide. We're going to select both of these panels, right mouse click and maximum height. And I think that I don't actually need it to be as wide as the patient entry one, but I'll drag that over so it's pretty much level with that control. If you're not sure, move the control up, so it needs to be just a little bit wider. So the width, we go 356, and then if we select both of those two, right mouse click and align to bottom, then that aligns those controls. We'll change the translucency to 50 again. Okay, that's fine. Now I can't remember for the moment which of these two edit lines we want on the panel, so I'm going to leave them there for the moment. But what I do want is a bitmap control on that panel, so we'll select a bitmap control and drop it on, and that should now be on the panel, which it is. So we will then just size that accordingly, and we'll just leave a gap at the bottom here because we need one of these two edit lines. Like I said, I can't remember which one I want. And the last thing I want to do is grab a push button, and we'll drop that onto the form as well, and we'll have a width of 24. This is going to be button underscore find image. We don't need any text, but we will change the glyph to a PNG file, and the glyph that we want is going to be our magnifying glass again. So grab that one there. We'll set the alignment to centered, and then we will just position that accordingly. So just move it up to there, and we'll just resize the bitmap and right align those two. Okay, that's fine. Right, I think that we are done for that form for the moment. So what we'll do now is we'll drag down the tab control. We will right mouse click it, center back, and then that brings all of our controls to the front. I'm going to leave these as grey for the moment just as we work on some more positioning. We'll just take the height up to 340, and I think that will do for this lesson. In the next lesson we'll look at dropping some controls on the other tabs and working with the tab control, and then after that we'll look at the image. But I think that we've spent quite enough time on this window for the moment, so I'm going to right mouse click, save and close, and we're going to call this mp underscore patience. Make sure that it's compiled successfully, and it now appears in our recent items. So we're good for this lesson, and I will catch you on the next one, in which we will continue to build this form. Catch you later. Thank you very much. Bye bye.